Hello and welcome to the Vortex Tube. Today we are going to learn about the Akita framework. For this we are going to create a CRUD operation where we will perform create, read and update and delete operations using the Akita framework. So before we proceed with what Akita is, how it is useful to our application, we will go through the application that we will be going to create. So we will have a simple page that will have a small form for having a complex object for student information, and we will simply save that particular data, and that data will be available to your student list. And you can also perform some operations like delete and edit. Clicking on delete button will simply delete that from the table, and also it will delete from your database if you have API implemented and the database for that. Let us see how it is working. I am going to add a simple details for the student record. So I have added all the details, that is name, address, email address, and some basic information like gender, blood group, and the course. So when I am clicking on save, it is immediate available to your view. So with the help of Akita, it is very easy to manage all the things that are around in our heavy store. Suppose that you have a very complex storage and you are keep on adding and updating and keep on retrieving all the details, then Akita is very useful for you. So when we have a heavy set of data that are coming from database and with the help of API, and it takes a lot of time, so we are simply making a store, and that store is available to your view, and you can utilize that store for adding, updating and deleting. Once you are adding any record, it will simply get all the new whatever fresh data is available on your store and make it available to your view. It is a kind of observable that is keep on tracking what are the new record are coming and what are the previous data. It will keep on synchronizing all the data from your backend and make it available to your view. Deleting from the Akita storage is simply like you are calling the API, and once your API success, you are using that success response and delete the particular data from your store. And once you delete the particular record from the store, it will immediately available to your view whatever the new store data will be. Let me delete that particular SAM record. So we are able to delete the particular user, and now we are going to edit the record. Clicking on edit will fetch all the data from the particular store and make it available to your view, and you can perform various updates into your record. You can change the name, you can change the address, and just submit the record, and you will find like it is immediately available to your store, and that particular updated store is able to view in your student list. So what you can find Akita, you can go to Google and perform various search, and you can find Akita is very useful for React, Angular, Vue, web component, and for plain vanilla JS. So when we have a heavy lifting of data, and it serves a useful tool for managing clean, scalable application. So we can say like it is built on top of RxJS with the functionality of state management, and has a multiple data storage from Flux and immutable updates from Redux. So on the later on in our application, what our Akita is useful, how it is useful in our application, we will have a demo example that I have already shown you. We are going to create that particular application, and you can later on perform various operation. I have already added the complex object for student record having multiple set of object. It will have a course, it will have address, so you will find it useful later on once you are completing this particular example. Okay, let us start for the implementation. So let us start going through the database that we are going to utilize in our student management of record with the help of Akita. So we are going to utilize this particular database that is called student DB, and there we will have one student table that will have the columns ID, name, email, phone, gender, course, send, update, street, city, state, blood group. Whatever data that we will be adding there will be visible to your view, that is coming from this particular database. Now we have already added the database that we are going to utilize in our Akita framework for state management of student record, and now we are going to create the web API through which we will be calling our server and update the records accordingly. So what you have to do, simply create the web API application in .NET using Visual Studio. You can have different framework, so you can go to Node and some other APIs, but right now I have used the Visual Studio for creating the web API application. And once you create the application, you have to give your application name. I have given the name student API, and there I have created one model folder, you can see like this, and inside the model I have created two class file. One is for address, the same that we are going to utilize in our UI side, that is having the state, city, and street. And second class is student class, that is the complete information for the student record, that is ID, name, email, phone, gender, course, send updates, blood group, and the address for the complex property. So these are this student class represent simply the model that we are going to utilize. And now we have to create the controller, we have to create the API that we will be calling. So I have added a controller file. You can simply go to your project and add the controller, web API controller. It will inherit this particular API controller, and if you have any doubt, then you can comment and I will add this particular project from the very scratch. Right now I have already created, so while learning the Akita framework, I don't think I have to add this particular project. So still I am giving this particular overview. So we have this particular API controller for student that have the route prefix of API/student, and after that you have to create your connection string, as you already know how you are going to make, create, read, update, and delete operation in your database. The first API call that we are going to call is all student details, that we are going to call get all student method. There we will have the SQL command, and we will have to create the student list, and you have to create the connection and command text, and you are simply executing the reader and fetching all the student record and adding this particular student list. So it will add and simply respond you the complete set of information related to all students. And for getting the simple single student record, I don't think that we are going to utilize, but still we have API to get the latest from the database. So again, you are calling this particular method through this endpoint, and this will simply read a particular record and send it back to you. And for adding the new record, for adding the new student from our UI, we will be sending this particular endpoint, and that student will come in with a particular set of record details, and we are simply doing nothing but opening the connection and creating the command with all the inputs that we are required, and we are executing the scalar that will return you the new ID also. This is doing nothing but inserting the record that are coming from UI side. For updating the record, what we are doing, we are simply sending the old student record which having the details, and we are updating it where ID is matching to the particular student ID. And now our last operation is delete student. So we will be sending the student ID, and it will simply remove that particular record from your database and send you the status if it is able to delete. So this is our API part, and we will later on continue to build the UI that with the help of Akita and HTML and Angular. We will be basically create the Angular application to utilize these particular APIs. Now let us start building the application for the UI, and that will utilize the things related to API and the database that we have already talked. Let us create the new Angular application using Angular CLI. So our application has been created. You can check, like all the node modules and everything are ready. So now let us start with our working project. Let me create a folder, student. Sorry, I think we have to create the student folder inside our app, as everything is there inside. So clicking on adding new folder and give it a name as student. and inside your student we have to create components. So let us create a new folder, and we have to have some models. Let us create another folder, that is model, and it also contains some services. So let me create a new folder for services, and for Akita we will be creating a separate folder, that is store. So now, till now what we have done, we have created this particular student, and this particular folder will be treated as a complete module that will have the store as well as component as well as model and services. Perfect. Now we have to start working on this particular student folder. There we will have the student module that will contains all the functionality related to the CRUD operation that we are going to perform for the student management. Now what we have to do, we have to install Akita. So your Akita has been installed successfully. Now we will have to start proceeding with our functionalities and operations that we need to perform. So let me start with creating the component that is for utilizing the student functionality. We will have the two components. First one is add student, and the second one will be student list. So let me start with adding the component. So we are going to add the student component for adding the student component inside the student folder. Okay, perfect, it is added. Yes, it is available, and now I am going to add a new component that is named as something we called student list, and this component is also added. So we have now two components that are ready. So now we have our components ready, and now we are going to add a store. Let me add the new file inside this particular store folder. Let us give it a name, student.query.ts, and we will be doing something. We have to create an interface, export interface student state. This will do nothing, but it will tell you whether the students are loaded or not. You have to create the initial state. On the very starting, it is assumed like the students are not loaded, and this should be injectable. Let me add it in the root. We have to configure your store. Give it a name. Okay, now we have to export. Pass the initial state, that is we have already added on the very top. Let me add all the dependencies that needed. Oh, we have not added the student model. Let it be, later on we will be adding. So we have defined the constructor, and now we have to create the load student. That will be array of student. Okay, till now it seems perfect. Also, we have forgot to add our models. Let me add the model inside this particular model folder. Let me add the same that we have added on our API end. So this will be our address model, and your student model will be like, we are utilizing this particular address, in our student model. Now in query, let us see that error is gone. So till now what we have created the store, the student store, and now we have to create the student query. So we are going to add the student query file. We have to rename the file actually. We have to make it student store. Okay, by mistake we have created this by name student query. Now we are going to add the student query file. Okay, now what we have to create here, it will be simply tell you whether the record has been updated or not, or you can perform the query operations. It should be injectable. We have to create the student query, and that will extend the query entity. Sorry. So we have to create the constructor where we will inject the store. We will simply pass the store to the super object. So these are the things that are already imported. This is by mistake that has been added. So till now what we have created the store, we have created the query, and now let us move toward the services. Let me add one more file. That will be student dot service dot ts. Query should be injectable. Sorry, your service should be injectable. let me import the student service and create the object for HTTP, create the object for store, that will be student store, create the object for query, and whatever your API URL will be, I am going to add this. This may be different based on your system. Create the constructor. So we have to install the HTTP client that you can install by npm install, that will be available. Now start creating the methods that are required. I have already added, so I am just copying directly. This tab will be coming from RxJS. Later on we will be adding these that are not already added. Let me add the edit method. So this will simply take the student object and it will simply hit your API and it will save that particular student record and tab what by functionality you already know it is used for performing multiple operators inside it, multiple operations, and tab will utilize this value and you can use this particular value without changing the value, and the value that we are sending, we are simply adding that particular value to the store and doing nothing. In our edit case, we are simply updating that particular student record with the help of your put query, and later on you are utilizing that particular value via tab and updating your store. What delete is doing, delete is simply taking that particular student record and utilizing their ID to delete that particular via HTTP query, and later on it will get the value whether it is true or false. Based on that you can do whatever you want, and I am doing nothing but remove that particular record from the store. Get all student, that will be initially called, and I will simply call this particular get all student to load the student values. It will do nothing but getting all the students from the database via HTTP and tapping that value to load the store. This is nothing for selecting the particular record from the store with the help of ID, and later on you already know what, after getting this particular object, you can do whatever you want. You can make it view, you can utilize it for updating the record, etc, etc. Let me go to the student, add student component. There what you need, you have to create the functionality for adding the student record. That will do nothing but creating the object from UI and sending it to the store. I'm just copying and pasting all the things that are required. So what we have created, this is the imported files, and this is your class add student component, and I have created groups that will denote the blood groups, and I have created address model that is blank. I have created the student model that is blank. Inside the constructor I am just passing the student service, student query. I don't think whether I have used, and you can pass it based on your requirement in your application. If you are required to pass these particular values, then you can later on utilize. And when you click on submit from your UI, that will do nothing but taking that particular student model and coming it, and it will check if your student ID is blank, it is 0, then it means it is the fresh record, and it will call the add student method from the service, and it will add to your database via API, as well as it will add it to the store also. You can see this, you are simply passing it to the API and also tapping the value and storing that particular to the store. And if that particular ID is not blank, it is having some value, then it will come to the edit student state, and it will go on and update that particular value via put, and also it will update the store to that particular ID. I don't think I am using these particular values. If you are finding it, then you can go on and utilize these values. Let me add the HTML file. So what we are utilizing the bootstrap functionality that will have a student registration on the top, and it will simply ask you to enter the details that you have already seen in your application. So after adding this heading, you can go on creating your form. We have created the form, and we have the submit details functionality that we have already know that this method is going to call to set all the values from the form. Using bootstrap and HTML, we are creating this particular view. This is your name field, and it will have some required authentication applied in it. This is for email address, this is for phone number, text box, and this is for gender. You can put it on the text box. This is for the blood group, that will ask you which blood group you want to select, and it will keep on looping these particular groups that we have already added here, and it will simply give you the drop down to select the particular blood group. And this is the course having the radio buttons for the set of courses like BCA, BTech, BE, BSc, and comes to the address part. It will have ng model group of address. You already know we have created this address model that we are utilizing it. It will come as ng model like student model dot address dot street dot city dot state for creating the UI. And for send updates, you already know I have created, and later on when you click on submit, it will do nothing but submit your details. And also we are keeping a student model ID as a hidden field. If the particular record is having the student ID value, then it will be treated as to update the particular record. So I am done with creating the add student component, and now we are going to utilize the student list component. So student list component will do what? It will simply list out your all the values that are added. Let me add all the dependencies that are required. It will have a selector this, and this will be our component. Let me simply update this file. We are working on student list component. This is of no use, and it will have the view child, that is add student component, that we are going to use. And we have created some subscriptions and the student to be updated. We have put it in this particular student class object. And before we are proceeding, we have to make sure like we have created an observable of kind student list that will select all the records and keep on getting all the updated record that are coming from the store via query. And this is our constructor. There we have injected the student service, we have injected the student query, and if you are getting some use, then later on you can use this particular router. So in your listing out student records, you will have the edit and delete button. For delete functionality, you are simply passing that particular student, and with the help of this service you are deleting the student. Let me go inside it. Yes, there we are simply deleting the record, and once the record has been deleted from the database via API, then it will go and remove from the store also. And once you click on edit student, it will do nothing, but it will getting that particular student via student ID, we have created on student service, and it will select that particular record from the student store, and it will give it back to you the value that will be the student record, and the model that you are going to update, it will set into this particular student model. What is this student model? This is from the add student we have already defined in add student component, this one. Once this model will be set, it will be getting visible on your add student form, so you are able to view that particular student via setting this particular value after getting that particular value from the store. On init method, what we are doing nothing but selecting via the query, and with the help of this you are getting called all the students. If the students are not loaded, then it will call this particular method get all students. What it will do, it will fetching all the data from the API through the database, and it will load that particular student record to your store, and it will set to true, like are loaded, that are you can see student are coming on student array, and are student loaded will be set to true. That means student record has been set. And no need to you have to subscribe, and it will do nothing. And on destroy, you have to dispose all your subscription that you have created. Let me create the HTML part for this. So I have just copied, and all the student list HTML will be here. What it will be containing, it will contain the div container where you already know the bootstrap. It will have the column of 12 size. We have take it out the column value of 6 for the add student component, that will be the student adding of form, and the remaining 6 column I will be using for listing out the student records. And this will have 3 columns: name, phone, and action, and it will loop out all the records of the students that are currently on the store asynchronously, and it will show you only 2 values, name and phone number, and it will have 2 action. This is for the name column, this is for the phone number, and this is for your action. And once you are clicking on delete or edit, it will perform the functionality accordingly. Delete and edit we have already created. You can see in this particular file, student list component. Delete student, it is passing the student object, and edit student, it is passing the object. So we are done with creating the components, we are done with creating the model, we are done with creating the service, and we are done with creating the store. Now what we have to do, we have to import the module to our app module. So you have to export the class student module that will contains all the declaration component that we have created, and the student service inside the provider. That's all. It will be combined as a single module for the student functionality, and you have to import this particular student module in your app module. Let me go to the app module, this one. Inside the import, you have to pass your student module that is already added from here. And if you are utilizing this component, then you can also add this particular module. Let us go to the app component.html. This will have a small change that is required to show your starting page. So we will have the navbar that will have the student record management using Akita that you have already seen on the very starting. And we have used the router outlet. So what basically this is using, there we have to create the route. Actually we can also utilize directly via the selector, but let me create the router outlet file. Let us add a new file. I think this is already exist. So this will be our routing module file, and there we have defined the path for add student list, but this path will only be utilized if you are using the different module that are switching from one page to another, and you have created different pages that are updated via routing. And but we are right now using only student list component that has the add student component also inside it, so we have nothing to do with these all components that has been added in the routing path. Let me run npm install. So as to get all the missing packages. Perfect. You can also give the background style based on your requirement. I am giving the background and this will be your title. So I am done with creating all the necessary files that are required. Let me close everything. and let me start the application. Before we start, let me quickly update all the missing reference. Inside the component, let me check if I am missing anything. No, there also it is fine. So we have created everything. So once you are starting your application, make sure that you are also running your API project, or if your API is hosted, then no need to run. You can directly utilize that particular service. Let us see what will happen if I am putting a breakpoint over here, and I am simply going on and reloading this particular page. So I am coming this particular point, and let me go directly to the last and send. It is sending me this particular record that I've already shown you. It contains the address and the details for the Jerry Morgan. Let me quickly run this out. Okay, we are getting the particular data from the database, and it is visible to our student list. Now I'm going to add one more record. Let me say Sam. I am adding the details. Okay, now I'm clicking on submit. That will call the submit details method from the add student component, and it will go on calling the API HTTP put for registering the student to the database, and also it will update our Akita store immediately after getting the response. Let me add one more record. Okay, so in this way we can add, and you can also see all the details are added successfully in our database. And when I am clicking on refresh, you can see I am getting the latest data, that all the details I have added recently. So now I am going to edit the particular record. Let me say I am going to edit Sam. I am renaming it to Sam Davidson, and I am changing its phone number. Clicking on submit will immediately reflect your store, and it will get the updated data, and it will list out you in your student list view. Let me see whether it is coming from the database or not. See, the thing that I have updated, it is already here. Now I am going to delete a particular record. Let me delete this particular record. and let us check if it is reflected on DB side. Now we are getting the count only 2. That Harry record has been deleted. So we are done with creating the CRUD operation using Akita framework with the help of web API, and we are utilizing the SQL Server database. Thank you so much.